a massive fire at the Arkema chemical plant about 25 miles northeast of Houston. It began with flooding, followed by a power outage, then the equipment to keep explosive chemicals cool, it shut down. Early yesterday morning came the first fire, then late today, a large explosion followed by that large fire that we understand has thankfully died down again. Now, for obvious reasons, CNN's Brian Todd is not nearby. He joins us, though, with the very latest. So what do we know exactly about this fire, Brian?
Anderson, we can tell you that officials from Arkema Incorporated had told us for most of this week that they expected incidents like this to occur, and they just posted a statement just moments ago saying that they expected this, that the redundant refrigeration systems that cooled those toxic peroxide chemicals, the organic peroxide, that they knew that those systems had failed and that this was all heating up inside as a result of massive flooding inside. They had about 40 inches of water, but they've just posted a statement saying, as agreed with public officials, the best course of action is to let this fire burn itself out. They also said we will likely see additional incidents. So you're going to see more fires like this at the Arkema chemical plant there in Crosby, Texas. They had evacuated a 1.5-mile zone around that plant. Anyone who lived within that perimeter was taken out about 2 or 3 days ago, Anderson. It also had an 11-person, quote, ride-out team there when Hurricane Harvey hit on Friday night. They were there through the weekend. Then they basically became very cognizant of the fact that the plant was flooded, heavily flooded, and that those cooling systems for those organic peroxide chemicals, which are so sensitive and so toxic, were going to, fail. They did fail. So this is what was expected. The company's treating this as if, look, we all expected this. There are going to be more incidents like this. We're just going to let it burn out.
So, Brian, just to be clear, I mean, I know the area's been evacuated, but obviously people seeing this and they hear chemicals and they see fire are going to be concerned about the effects of that stuff in the air.
Absolutely, Anderson. And what's interesting also is that a couple of days ago, they sent some local, I believe it was Harris County deputies, to the scene to kind of check things out and make sure people were out of there. And some of those deputies were treated for smoke inhalation, but they did determine that the smoke they inhaled was not toxic. So those deputies were treated and released. They seem to be okay. But, you see images like this and you know what's inside that plant, and they've got to be concerned about some kind of a toxic, contamination there that could affect, areas even beyond the 1.5 miles. Now, I think another fortunate thing that you can look to is there really hasn't been a lot of wind in this. It's very heavy air now around the Houston area and points east, so there's not a lot of wind after the hurricane. So hopefully whatever's burning there doesn't spread very far.
But just to be clear, the company is saying that there is no danger from what's going into the air, correct?
They have said that. They have not indicated at all that there's any danger. Now, I have to say also that they haven't given a whole lot of other information other than to say, we expected this and we're going to let it burn out. And they, they at one point, I think, did apologize for a lack of information on this. But we're not getting a lot of information tonight other than to say they're going to let this burn out.
All right, Brian, I appreciate the reporting. Joining us now is retired Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore, who obviously led military efforts in Katrina 12 years ago. When you see a fire like this, obviously it raises concerns, but it also is it tells the story of what happens in a disaster like this, where there's all these ripple effects that sometimes you can't predict at the outset, or a lot of people don't really think about after the outset, whether it's Beaumont last night running out of clean drinking water or now this chemical fire.
That's why they're disasters. You lose control of what's happening. And in this particular case, Anderson, the company is the main spokesman, right, as opposed to the EPA, who we pay a lot of money to control this, which is Region 6 out of Dallas. They should have a representative there, an incident commander, supervising this, telling the American people, yet we got a French company, public affairs officer, informing the people of Texas of what's happening. Right. Don't worry about it. Be happy. I get concerned when there's an equal 1.5 mile circumference, because even with little wind, there's a jet stream that will carry that chemical to a certain direction. And that's what the federal government is telling the people of Texas, where is the plume and what direction that chemical is going in once it burns. The easy way to tell it is to see what direction the smoke's going, because it's getting in a jet stream and it's going somewhere in the 4 different cardinal directions. So it's just concerning when they talk to the term toxic. It's toxic, and it operates with an exception to the Clean Air Act.
So let me ask you, in a situation like what we're having here,
Yeah.
where does the buck stop? Who is in charge? Is the governor of the state? I mean, he gave a press conference earlier
He's the
today.
senior elected official in the state who has an equivalence of the Texas Department of Environmental Quality.
So FEMA is reporting the governor, or, I mean, they obviously are having big group meetings.
Well, the FEMA brings in a part of the EPA with them. They have an EPA team with this, but there's no spokesman. You're leaving it to this French company to tell the people of the United States, don't worry. And there's a 1.5 mile circumference. We heard the sheriff talk earlier. Sheriff doing the best he deferred to the fire chief, but even this could be beyond the fire chief's scope. And where is the Texas EPA? Where is the Region 6 of the EPA out of Dallas? Where is Mr. Pruitt? This is a teardrop of what could happen south of the city, where we have what we call a chemical corridor. And if we can't handle this one in clear communications to the American people, it should leave us rise for concern. Because I can tell you this plant operates with an exception to the Clean Air Act, because they're allowed to release certain amount of toxin into the air, because it is a toxic chemical. You heard the public affairs officer said earlier, well, it's relative to concentration and how close you are to it. Those sheriffs got sick. Yeah. That's an indication. We got
They said it was smoke inhalation. Again, just to tell folks, I believe that's a Coast Guard helicopter. I see it red, so I'm assuming that passing overhead. It's a common sound, a common sight, obviously, even in Houston now, even though there's not the same kind of rescues on rooftops that we've been seeing in other parts. There's still a lot of air traffic. It's one of the things that surprised me going out with the Coast Guard yesterday is just how many air assets are flying over a place like Beaumont, like Vidor, Port Arthur, and how difficult it is for, there is central command of it and control from the ground, but a lot of it is just the pilots turning around, looking up, looking down, looking left and right to make sure they know where all the other choppers are.
A senior Army warrant officer one time told me, said, fly your airplane. And because if the instruments are not working, we had over 200 aircraft in New Orleans without instrumented, because all the instrumentation was broken until the Iwo Jima got there. And when the Navy ship get here, they'll be able to provide air command and control for those low-flying helicopters. But this is just good training and a tribute to our pilots.
Yeah, they're
flying the airplanes. Yeah. They're not flying instruments.
And hovering, spot on, 150.
Some of the nation's best.
Incredible. Really
incredible. Some of the nation's best.
General Honore, appreciate it as always. At this time last night, our Gary Tuchman was at Baptist Hospital in Beaumont, and they'd begun airlifting patients out because, as I mentioned, the entire city's drinking water supply had gone down. It's going to be several days at the soonest before they get it back, we're told. Hard to imagine that. But the river east of the city was expected to crest only today. This morning, more than 80 patients were still in the hospital, 14 infants, including 11 preemies in the NICU. As of right now, the hospital says every single one of them has been evacuated. Only 14 other patients remain. That is certainly welcome news. The water system is still down, and that remains obviously a huge concern tonight. A helicopter now kind of circling over this area. And actually, can't see it, but it's, again, just as we were talking about, a lot of times the choppers just circle, and it's literally, it's the flight mechanic, the rescue swimmer, even the pilots, just looking, reading what's happening on the ground and trying to see if there's anybody in trouble. And one time they could pass and there'd be nothing. 2 minutes later they pass and a car has gone down a road they shouldn't. They're in suddenly deep water and they got to do a rescue. So we see this chopper now circling around in this area. Gary Tuchman is near Beaumont. Gary, what do we know about the water system? Is there any word when that is going to be restored?
Well, firstly, Anderson, there's a lot of valor and stress here in Beaumont and Port Arthur. You have evacuations going on in military jets. There's a military jet behind this bus that is full of people about to get onto it, to leave this area. You also have continuing searches, and yes, you have this water situation. Here's what we know. We are being told that the water service to the city of 118,000 people could resume very soon. We don't know how soon. Engineers from ExxonMobil and other companies have devised this temporary pump. And the idea of the pump is to divert water from the swollen rivers and put it in the city's water system. So they're hoping that's done soon, but they don't want to tell us an exact time. But it's very difficult for people here not to have any water. And when they do get it back, You can't eat with it. You can't cook with it. You can't put it on your face. You got to boil it first before you get it back. But right now, it is not back in this.
From the airport, which is where you're at.
Right, Anderson. So this is a very unusual situation here. Is you've had people come to this airport between Beaumont and Port Arthur, in both cities. A lot of them thought this was the shelter they would be staying at for a few days, but this is only a temporary facility. It's not big enough to hold all the people. So hundreds of people came here. Most of them stayed on the buses that brought them. Some of these buses that you see, because they're air conditioned, it's too hot inside the terminal. And what they're doing now, they're telling people on these buses, okay, would you like to fly to Dallas? They have a big centers there where you can take it easy, where you can decide what to do with your life. So these people are boarding the plane that you can't see behind this bus. This bus just pulled up, but it's a C-130 military airplane. They're boarding the plane. They're flying to Dallas, Texas, and it's there where they'll start the next part of their lives. We talked to a lot of people aboard the buses. They waited to board the planes today. We talked to this very nice couple that lost their house. Listen to what they said to us.
We feel lucky. You know, I went through stage 4 breast cancer not too long ago in 15, and my scans come back good all the time. So
Is
yeah,
that much of a problem?
yeah. And
Compared
then
to
my
that.
husband just broke his hip, so we're just like, yeah, you know,
You both have remarkable attitudes.
yeah.
Well, you don't. Yeah, hey, that's all you can do. If you get down, you're not helping yourself or anybody around you.
Two of the people we met today, we talked to dozens of people, all suffering greatly, but all extremely kind to us. It was very motivating to hear that. They're all going into a place where they have an unknown future. Anderson?
Yeah, Gary, appreciate that. Joining me now is the Beaumont Fire Chief, Ann Huff. Chief, appreciate you being with us. I know how exhausted you must be. Just tell us what's the latest situation in Beaumont. Are the residents still without water tonight? And how are they getting water?
Out water at this time. Our Emergency Operations Center is working on distribution points, pods, to give drinking water out. They still are working on, with ExxonMobil engineers, as you had your previous guest state, trying to have a fix for the water system before the waters actually go down. Not sure when that's going to be ready, but the situation here actually is pretty good, considering we're all counting our blessings. We've got a number of people that have been displaced. We've done a lot of rescues, but we're resilient people. We've been through Rita and Ike, and so we've learned lessons from those, and we're in for the long haul.
So there are a lot of folks who, as you said, very resilient, who've been sticking it out. They had supplies. If they're not able to get, though, clean drinking water in the coming days, do you expect the number of people seeking evacuations to rise?
Well, I don't expect any disturbances to develop. If people over the coming days want to evacuate, we don't have any mandatory evacuation. We are trying to get people whose homes who've been displaced, making longer-term shelters available to them. But at this point, I think the community is pretty stable. Everybody is pulling together, and our teams are doing a great job trying to get the city back up and running.
And just in terms of flooding, do you know how much of Beaumont is still flooded?
I don't have any numbers on that right now. We had some heavy flooding in our north end of town and along the river, and in a west end section along Walden Road. I'm not really sure about the square mileage of those numbers. The EOC could give you probably good solid numbers on those. We did have one of our fire stations, Fire Station 5, flood and had to relocate those crews.
Chief Huff, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much. Even as recovery efforts continue here, another potential threat is over the horizon, and though no one should be going to red alert just yet over it, Hurricane Irma has a lot of forecasters watching very carefully. Our Allison Chinchar is in the Weather Center tracking the storm. She joins us now. It's a long way off, but what's the latest in terms of strength, location, and possible landfall?
Right. The most recent thing to happen is that it is now back up to a Category 3 storm. It had been that earlier this morning, then went through a weakening phase, going back down to a Category 2. But where it sits right now, it went through what we call an eye wall replacement cycle. Oftentimes, that's when the storm itself is trying to regroup and re-intensify, and it did just that. So we are now looking back at winds around 120 miles per hour. That puts it back to a Category 3, looking like a relatively healthy storm at this point in time. But it's over the middle of the Atlantic, no land anywhere in sight. So the question becomes, where does it go in the short term? You'll see it starts to take a little bit of a dip down to the south. In doing so, it's actually going to encounter some warmer water, and that's actually going to allow the storm to intensify even more, perhaps up to a Category 4, if not even stronger than that. But Anderson, this is just what it's going to do in the next 5 days.
So where do you see long term? I mean, obviously it's hard to model something this far out.
Right. So after 5 days, that becomes the big question. But let's take a look at it. We'll take a look at two of our top models, the ones that we often go to for. Now, in the short term, really the next 5 to 7 days, they really don't vary all that much. It's once we start really getting towards the Caribbean, that's where you start to see them spread. Okay, this reddish pink color, this being the American model. The yellow one down here, this is the European. Notice the European takes more of a southerly and westerly track. This, if this one poses true, that's the one that would take it towards Florida, potentially even entering the Gulf. The American model takes it much further north and a little bit further east into the Atlantic. This one would have a much better chance, say, of impacting the Carolina coast, Anderson, or perhaps even the Northeast. But again, we're talking a timeline of next weekend at the absolute earliest. So a lot can change, but it's nice to know what some of the models are saying, so at least have somewhat of an idea of what to expect.
Yeah, Allison Chinchar, appreciate that. Thanks. We'll continue to watch it. Reports of food and water running low in West Houston. We'll get a live update on the situation there next. And a lot happening at the White House, including the upcoming departure of one of the president's closest aides, dating back decades. Details ahead. Well, even though some parts of Houston are drying out, the situation is getting worse in parts of the city, including West Houston, where reports of food running low. Nick Valencia joins us now with the latest on that. So I understand people there are starting to run out of food and water that they've been holding on to. What are you seeing, and are there plans right now to get supplies to folks there?
Barker Cypress, Anderson, is still under water a week after Hurricane Harvey hit here. This situation is almost as desperate as ever. The mayor is telling people to get out while they can, but in some cases they remain stranded back there. That's why people are taking matters into their own hands. We joined a group from Ceres Environmental, first responders that came as far away from Washington, D.C. to help out those here that are stranded. And as you mentioned, running out of supplies, basic essentials, food and water. One of the people that we saw them rescue on one of those two rescue missions was an elderly man who was standing at a gas station in flooded water, just sort of aimlessly walking around back and forth. He was waiting for help. Another one of those people was a man named Terry Gay, who was running out of food and water. He had been stranded in those apartment complexes back there for over a week, and it was just now that he was emerging because he was running out of supplies. Anderson?
So if you could just show us what's going on around you and kind of explain, if you could have your cameraman kind of push past and just show what's going on as we speak.
Sure.
Because are some of the people who
Sure.
are now leaving, are they folks who were trying to ride out the storm?
That's right, and they're just now coming out. Part of what's going on as I step off camera here, Steve, if you want to zoom in there, is the rescue missions are sort of wrapping up as the sun sets. This queue of people here, the crowd was swelling. Dozens of people were here waiting to try to get back in. Part of these civilian boats dipping into this water here, taking individuals that hadn't been back to their home since Hurricane Harvey hit. A lot of people hoping that they could find something, medication, important documents, records, things like that. This is the last of what remains of those people that are standing in line, hoping to catch a ride on one of those boats. One of the things those residents that we got on that boat, or I'm sorry, on that truck, one of the things that they said is there's an airboat that's going back there, and it's accelerating really fast, and it's causing wakes of water, and it's pushing this flood water even to places further, to places that it hadn't been before. So people here who are coming to help, in some situations, they're making the situation, in some instances, are making the situation even more complicated. Anderson?
Yeah, I know. From having been on those airboats, they obviously do kick up a wake. You see a lot of signs now people have put up just saying slow down. and most of the airboat operators are aware of the wake issue. And the ones I've been on, they go through these neighborhoods. They try to go through really slowly, but those are powerful boats, particularly when they're backing up. And that can cause some issues. Nick, I appreciate the reporting. You may have noticed gasoline prices across the country have risen an average of almost 17 cents a gallon since the storm. Texas Governor Greg Abbott tried to reassure Texans today that there's plenty of gas in the state and the country. Alison Kosik is in Dallas with the latest on that. So, Alison, lines were long and stations were closed yesterday, I remember. Has it gotten any better today?
It really hasn't. These long lines, they continue, especially where we are. This line wrapping around the corner. And if you drive around Dallas, if you didn't see a line at the gas station, it was probably because the gas station was out of gas. In fact, this one that we're at is almost out of gas completely. It's only got 2 pumps working, and there are 8 sitting here, so some of these drivers may be out of luck. One other thing I saw different today, the frustration and the tension building. I noticed one driver in a red Camaro waiting in line at a gas station, running out of gas, right there in line and having to push his car to the pump. Another driver getting in a fight with a gas attendant about his place in line. That gas attendant having to spray him with pepper spray just to kind of break up the fight. I actually shot that with my iPhone today. As long as we see these refineries shut down, we're going to see these gas supply disruptions. But exacerbating the problem, Anderson, is that a lot of drivers are feeling panicked. They're feeling the need to top off their tanks. They're feeling the need not just to fill up their tanks, but to also fill up those canisters. And analysts say that's really just making the problem worse. Anderson?
Yeah, I've also heard reports about, we've talked about the rising prices, average of 17 cents, but even price gouging in some places.
Yeah, and prices legitimately are rising because of this supply crunch. But yes, the Texas Attorney General has said that its office has received hundreds of complaints, hundreds of phone calls about gas stations around Dallas, at least even, gas stations gouging consumers, charging $6 to $8 a gallon for gas. Clearly, that's way too much. And these gas stations certainly opening themselves up potentially to some hefty fines. Anderson?
All right. Hate to see that. Alison Kosik, appreciate it. Thanks very much. Ahead, one woman's homecoming. A lot of people are trying to get back to their homes for the first time. We went out with one woman who went to her house by canoe. I'll tell you what she saw ahead.
It's like magic. All rolling and riding and sleeping and sliding. It's magic.
Introducing the all-new Volkswagen Tiguan, the new king of the concrete jungle.
When heartburn hits, fight back fast with Tums Chewy Bites. Fast relief in every bite. Crunchy outside, chewy inside. Tums Chewy Bites.
Free Communication Weekend, that's how I started on eHarmony. Being able to see who I was going to get matched with and communicate with them was a really good introduction.
This weekend, you can message your matches for free. No credit card required.
I've seen them all. Big, small, wide, slim, but never two exactly the same. Which is why at Men's Warehouse, we create the perfect fit. Because no matter what size your label says, it's time to like the way you look.
Excuse me, mind if I sit here?
Not if you want your phone to work.
Let me guess, can't live stream your lobster roll?
And my mobile pay isn't connecting, and I just got an unlimited plan.
Right plan, wrong network. You see, Verizon is America's largest, most reliable 4G LTE network. And now, unlimited plans start at $40 per line. You know what I'm saying? Oh, this is yours. Definitely. Yep, just tucking it in. No, I wasn't going to pull it out.
Introducing Unlimited for All. All the data you want on the network you want. Now starting at $40 per line for 4 lines.
So you're saying you didn't eat this ice cream?
Baby, I swear on my lucky shirt. I ate it.
Lightning bolt. Seen it, covered it. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
There is a mood in Washington tonight of a president who is very much on the defensive.
Polls show that a lot of American people just simply don't believe it.
Together, we'll make America great again. Thank you very much.
Hi, yes.
Hi. We signed a contract for your AT&T internet deal, and I'm not loving it.
No, we're going to cancel.
Honey, I'm 1,000 years old. I got this.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Doing great.
We want to cancel? $180? You guys are bloodsuckers. Not in a good way.
Termination fees are evil. Spectrum doesn't have them. AT&T bad. Spectrum good.
It's time for the biggest sale of the year with the new Sleep Number 360 smart bed. It senses your every move and automatically adjusts on both sides to keep you effortlessly comfortable. And snoring? Does your bed do that? The new 360 smart bed is part of our biggest sale of the year where all beds are on sale. And right now, save 50% on the Labor Day limited edition bed plus 36-month financing. Ends Monday.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Well, today, Houston's mayor, the governor, local officials, they all spoke to the numerical dimension of the disaster. And at the end of the day, I mean, a week after the storm, this isn't just a situation about trillions of gallons of rain or 72,000 rescues or 136,000 homes and buildings flooded. It's a situation unfolding person to person, one person at a time, some of them now finally just returning home.
Susan Peterson has to use a canoe to get to her house.
It's probably a quarter of a mile.
Waited all week for the water to recede, but she can't wait any longer. Needs to see what's happened to her home. She invited us to go with her. The water too deep and dangerous in some spots to walk through.
Oh, there's quite a current. So this is your house?
In her front yard, one of her cars is completely submerged. The roof still visible.
That's one of your cars?
It's a 91 Cavalier.
From the outside, the house doesn't look too bad.
Are there stairs there?
Yeah, stairs under here.
But inside is another story.
The kids' bedrooms and bathrooms are all down the hall. I mean, down, that was ground level.
The two lower levels of the house are underwater. Garage, her office, and 3 bedrooms. Mold is already visible on the ceiling. Susan looks for her 4 cats, but finds no sign of them.
Guys?
Does it help to actually see it, or does it?
No, I think probably would have been better just wait until somebody's water was down.
So that's an original Pastor Jones.
Yeah.
After about 15 minutes inside, she decides to leave, not sure how to begin to rebuild. She'll come back later with her kids to search for the cats. For Susan and so many others here, the difficulty of the days ahead is all too clear.
Overwhelming.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, anyone returning to a flooded home or staying put in one faces a set of potential hazards or that most people don't ordinarily plan for, might not know how to cope with, which is why we're glad to have the expertise of my next guest. Dr. David Pearce is the Houston Department of Health and Human Services public health attorney. He's also Houston EMS's physician director. Thanks for being with us. A lot of folks, I mean, just like Susan, returning their homes with there's water in it. They're already seeing mold, which that's a lot of people. What are the potential hazards? What should people do?
Well, there's lots of potential hazards. One thing we worry about is what's in the water, or maybe what's not in the water. For instance, if there's a missing manhole cover. So I always worry about people walking through water. They don't know where they're about to step.
Even if the water seems shallow, you're saying there may be a drainage ditch that's open, but you can't see it from the surface.
And right, if the water is just a couple feet deep, the surface could be real still, but there could be a tremendous water, especially if there's a drainage port there. Tremendous force of water that could suck you in.
It was interesting just canoeing with her. It seemed really calm, and then all of a sudden we were in this current and got pushed into the bushes.
Yeah, there's a lot of dangers in that water that people can't see, and those are just the physical dangers, much less the the chemicals and the organisms that we worry about.
So inside a house, I mean, mold, you were talking before, there's a lot of different kinds of mold.
Right.
So what do people do?
Well, there's lots of different kinds of mold, but you can't tell the good mold from the not bad mold, and there's no such thing as a good mold, right? There's not bad, and then there's bad mold. You can't tell them apart. So as people get back to their homes, and everything that's wet, you just got to get rid of. Or, if there's documents and photographs, you can try and save them, but carpeting, bedding, that sort of stuff, that all needs to go.
Drywall, got to go down to this.
And we always say, wherever the water line is, you take the drywall at least a foot higher. You just get it all out of there, and then as best you can, try and dry everything. Fans, dehumidifiers, whatever you can get, try to dry it. That will minimize the mold development. You have to clean it too, right? So the first thing you do is clean it with soap and water, just get the mud and all the muck off of it. But then to go after that, you want to go over it with a bleach solution. Now, if it looks like it's a clean surface, you can go with 1 part of bleach to 5 gallons of water, at least. Nothing more dilute than that. But if you see mold, it needs to be at least 1 cup of bleach to 1 gallon, or stronger. But there's people may only have a couple of gallons and they want to make it stretch, and so that's the minimum concentration.
Obviously, the longer the water stays in a house, the more difficult it is to deal with.
Right.
Afterward.
And as you saw in this piece, so this one was only out of her house for a week, and she already had mold developing. So it doesn't take long for the mold to develop.
And that was just from the rain that came in through the roof.
That's right. So I fear that in a lot of these homes, which have had water in them for days, there's going to be a lot of getting rid of the mold, not just cleaning.
Wow. And in terms of, some people are trying to live in a house, even if there's water on the first floor, because there's still electricity in a lot of places. They're trying to live on the second floor. Is that a wise idea?
I really strongly recommend against it. Now, housing is an issue here that we're going to have. There's only so much housing, right? But your homes are really dirty, and there's all kinds of, so you got power in a house that still has water in it. Everybody knows that's dangerous. So really strongly recommend people to get some alternative housing, and the city has programs, the county has programs to help people with that. But staying in a house, especially a house that still has water in it, really not a good idea.
First, I know how busy you are. I really appreciate it, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We're going to have much more on Hurricane Harvey when we come back. But first, there's news out of Washington, D.C. CNN has learned that Special Counsel Robert Mueller now has a key piece of evidence that gives insight into why President Trump may have really fired his FBI director. Find out that now.
It's unbelievable. Geico just saved me hundreds of dollars on my car insurance.
Huh. I should take a closer look at Geico.
Geico has a 97% customer satisfaction rating and fast and friendly claim service.
Speaking of service. Ooh, just out.
It was in.
Out.
In.
Out.
In.
What about now?
That was our only shuttlecock.
Take a closer look at Geico. Great savings and a whole lot more.
Let's see. There's the Wildcats Till We Die Weekenders. The Watch Me Let It Fly. This I Gotta Try Weekenders. Then we've got the Bendy Spendy Weekenders. The Tranquility Awaits. Hanging with Our Mates Weekenders. And the It's Been Quite a Day, So Glad We Got Away Weekenders.
Whatever kind of weekender you are, there's a Hilton for you.
Book your weekend break direct at Hilton.com and join the Weekenders.
It's the Sears semi-annual blowout event. Save 10 to 70% off on all clothing and shoes. And up to 70% off on outdoor life for him and Simply Styled for her. Plus hot deals on jeans for kids starting at $8.99. Hurry in. Sale ends September 4th.
Say, Carl, we have a question about your brokerage fees.
Fees?
What do you have in mind?
I don't know. $4.95 per trade?
I was wondering if your brokerage offers some sort of guarantee.
Guarantee.
Where we can get our fees and commissions back if we're not happy.
So can you offer me what Schwab is offering?
What's with all the questions?
Ask your broker if they're offering $4.95 online equity trades and a satisfaction guarantee. If you don't like their answer, ask again at Schwab.
Experience advanced safety technology at the Lexus Golden Opportunity Sales Event before it ends.
Choose from the IS Turbo, ES350, or NX Turbo for $299 a month for 36 months if you lease now.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
It's got to be beachfront.
No, I don't like the sand. Let's just get...
If you can get picky with your bro weekend, why not get picky with your TV?
It's gonna be great.
Get a la carte TV only from Sling. Start at $20, then pick your personal channel lineup.
Looking good.
Season 10 of Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown starts Sunday, October 1st at 9 on CNN.
The facts on issue 2. Fact, it could force nearly 2 out of 3 Ohioans to pay higher drug costs. Fact, families with private insurance, veterans, and seniors could pay the heaviest price. Fact, a California healthcare CEO pushing issue 2 runs a billion-dollar organization that makes money selling prescription drugs. Fact, groups representing Ohio's doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and veterans are against issue 2. Vote no on issue 2.
I just picked up the cake for the baby shower.
Yay! You know she's having a boy, right?
Oh boy.
Buick now has an SUV for that. Introducing the new Buick Encore.
I knew I could trust you guys with the cake. No problem. That was close.
One of 3 luxury SUVs from the new Buick.
Get this low-mileage lease on this 2017 Buick Encore for around $199 per month. Plus, current non-GM lessees can get $3,000 additional lease cash.
I'm telling you, if he looks over here, he's going to see someone sitting here. He's coming right over here.
We're going to come back to Hurricane Harvey shortly. Tonight, though, we also have 2 big stories out of Washington, D.C. that we wanted to get to. First, there's new reporting tonight from the Washington Post and the New York Times that Special Counsel Robert Mueller has an early draft of the letter President Trump wrote with aide Stephen Miller that lays out why the president wanted to fire then FBI Director James Comey. Now, according to the Times, the White House counsel cautioned against sending that version of the letter because the contents could be, quote, problematic. Also tonight, one of President Trump's longest-serving aides, Keith Schiller, is reportedly leaving the White House. CNN broke that news today after serving as Mr. Trump's right-hand man for almost 2 decades. Schiller is leaving reportedly due to financial reasons, though one CNN source did say that Schiller was frustrated with new White House Chief of Staff John Kelly's organizational structure, which restricted his access to the president. I want to break all of this down now with Dana Bash, David Gergen, and Professor Jonathan Turley. So, Dana, multiple reports first on this draft letter tonight. Mm-hmm. How much does this ratchet up questions about the special counsel investigation, the extent to which the White House could have some explaining to do?
Well, I'm not sure how much it ratchets it up, but I think for those of us who aren't on the inside, it gives a little bit more of a window into what the special counsel is working on, which is a big danger zone for this White House and for this president, because the notion of getting this letter and the content of this letter suggests that the inquiry is, at least in part, looking at obstruction of justice. The reasons for firing James Comey, what were the president's bases for it, and the idea that this letter was written, which clearly the White House counsel, according to this report, and CNN has confirmed it, as you said, was not comfortable with the kind of apparently the rambling explanation that the president and Stephen Miller initially had put forward, which clearly suggested, maybe in a too honest of a way, that it was about the Russia investigation.
And Professor Turley, I mean, the caveat is obviously we have not seen this letter. Maggie Haberman in the New York Times says it was described to her as a quote, screed that included complaints pertaining to the Russia case. From a legal perspective, I'm wondering, do you think this is a big deal?
Well, it could be. This type of evidence is a contemporary record, and it appears to be an unlawyered draft. So it comes with a certain degree of credibility, authenticity, because of when and how it was created. It was remarkably incautious. Shouldn't be looking for catharsis by sending off this type of missive to a guy you just fired. And I'm sure the White House counsel was dead set against it, as been reported. There's issues of privilege, there's issues of simply being incautious. But it may be valuable. It may also exonerate the president. You know, the account indicates that he talks a lot about Comey's mistakes during the Clinton email investigation, and there appears to be one reference to the Russian investigation. Those types of mixed motivations are not going to make for a strong obstruction case.
Right. And David, I mean, the other odd thing is that, I mean, if this draft letter contradicts the president's actual termination letter to James Comey, say nothing about the president told Lester Holt on NBC about the Russia case playing a role in Comey's firing, That would be another sort of angle to this.
Well, I think that's right. Listen, we need to be cautious. We don't know really what's in the letters. We shouldn't overinterpret it. But it does raise questions about whether Mueller will find it helpful if he wants to build a case about obstruction of justice, that there are revelations in here that he hasn't had before about what the president's true intent was and the president's obsession with Comey and why he wants to shut it down. And if that's the case, I think it could be, as I say, it could add weight to a case against the president. But Professor Turley is right. It's possible that he could exonerate. I think we have to wait and see. But you would think that the White House counsel, having objected to the letter, would have destroyed it. I don't understand why it's still floating around.
Well, that's the interesting thing, right, is that this is the first we've heard from the White House counsel. It's like getting a radio signal from unoccupied space. Until now, we haven't seen any evidence of lawyering or a lawyer's presence in these early days. It does appear that the White House counsel reached a point where he drew a line.
But remember, to add to that,
go ahead.
CNN reported, we reported a month and a half ago or so, that the special counsel's office was very clear in a notice to the White House counsel that they must not destroy anything, that they must keep everything and turn everything over, which is standard operating procedure. You know that's standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
And perhaps at that time, it was too late to destroy it.
It would also violate federal law. Preservation.
Exactly. Or Don McGahn is doing what he's supposed to do, which is not destroy documents that are done at the White House. You're not supposed to do that. So, let's be glad that he didn't destroy it.
Dana, I mean, it is the first time we've heard Stephen Miller's name mentioned in as part of any kind of Russia investigation.
It is, and I think that this really does give, again, another window into more of the politics and the personnel and the disagreements that we reported some of real time when Comey was fired. And this suggests that Stephen Miller, who was with the president in Bedminster at his retreat there, his resort there, the weekend that he decided to fire Comey, was on the side of firing him along with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, whereas others, we know, were very much against it. And there was a big clash. Who won out? Now the Stephen Miller and Jared Kushner wing. But the fact that he was there and he was involved is not great news for Stephen Miller, because it means that he hasn't already gotten a lawyer. He's going to have to get one now, and probably going to be asked to come to the committees on Capitol Hill, in addition to appear before the special counsel's office.
Yeah, I mean, Professor Turley, he could very easily be subpoenaed, correct?
He can. That issue was litigated during the Clinton impeachment. I actually litigated that with Ken Starr. I was representing former attorneys general at the time. But these privilege issues went to court, and the Clinton White House lost. Bruce Lindsay, an attorney who argued attorney-client privilege lost. But they lost across the board, even with Secret Service agents. So yes, he can be forced into a grand jury. One of the benefits of the president bringing in private counsel is that they may have a privilege that government counsel would not.
Dana, one of the other news items said that the president's longtime body man, Keith Schiller, who worked for the Trump organization before going to work in the White House, is reportedly telling people he's leaving the administration for financial reasons. The White House denies this, by the way. But I mean, if it's true, it's another departure of a very close aide at a time when the president is said to be more and more isolated and surrounded by people who, are kind of new to him.
That's exactly right. And that's why when we at CNN heard this and got the information and reported it, we thought it was significant. This is just your typical director of White House operations. This is somebody who has been by the president's side for decades, bodyguard in the private sector and certainly on the campaign, and now in the White House, and has become a very close confidant. And you nailed it, Anderson. The idea at this point in time of someone like Keith Schiller potentially leaving the president's side at this point in time when the channels of communication that the president has are very limited, because that is what the White House Chief of Staff is trying to do, to try to make some order in the chaotic atmosphere, may not be so good for the president's psyche at this time.
You know, President Trump's going to be traveling back to Texas tomorrow. He's going to visit Houston, which obviously he didn't do Tuesday because operations were still, in the thick of things, as well as Lake Charles, Louisiana. The president's going to meet, it's believed, with storm survivors and volunteers. And there's a lot of questions about President Trump's promise to donate $1 million to hurricane relief today. Today, Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders couldn't answer whether the money would actually come from the president personally or from his foundation. That foundation has come under scrutiny before amid allegations that he often didn't follow through on promised donations or that the money really came from other people's foundations to his foundations. Sanders said the president has also not.
Để đáp ứng được nhu cầu sức khỏe và tâm lý của khách hàng, Tập đoàn Thể thao Kingsport đã nghiên cứu và cho ra đời dòng máy chạy bộ điện cao cấp.
Đây là dòng máy chạy bộ chăm sóc sức khỏe đẳng cấp. Những bước chạy của bạn sẽ trở nên thật thoải mái và êm ái.
Bởi vì máy chạy bộ Kingsport được ưu tiên cho diện tích thảm thật rộng, đảm bảo cho người chạy có khoảng không gian thật rộng rãi và an toàn.
Bề mặt thảm chống trơn trượt bằng chất liệu PVC thật bền chắc, chịu được tác động cao và đi suốt thời gian với tuổi thọ của máy.
Được thiết kế từ công nghệ kỹ thuật cao từ các kỹ sư Đức, kết hợp với lớp sơn tĩnh điện bên ngoài, làm cho máy chạy bộ điện cao cấp Kingsport tránh các tác nhân gây hại vào bên trong lõi thép, đồng thời tăng tuổi thọ và độ bền cho máy thật cao.
Tập đoàn Kingsport tự hào mang đến cho bạn sức khỏe và sự thịnh vượng. Hãy nhanh tay gọi đến tổng đài miễn phí của chúng tôi 1800 6862 để được tư vấn cho bạn.
Tập đoàn Kingsport là tập đoàn nổi tiếng trên thế giới, hoạt động độc lập về chuyên ngành thiết bị thể thao thông minh.
Để có được một sản phẩm chất lượng đến tay khách hàng, chúng tôi đã sản xuất những sản phẩm tinh tế nhất từ khâu nguyên liệu đầu và kiểm định chất lượng khắt khe cho khâu sản phẩm đầu ra.
Bạn hãy yên tâm, Kingsport, thương hiệu nổi tiếng sẽ phục vụ tận tình cho bạn.
Tự tin công nghệ chất lượng, tự hào thương hiệu nổi tiếng.
Chạy tốc độ với độ cao, chạy vượt đồi, chạy leo núi, chạy và chạy liên tục mà không hề gây trở ngại hay khó khăn gì với chiếc máy chạy bộ điện Kingsport.
Đẳng cấp của chúng tôi là chất lượng bền bỉ, mẫu mã sang trọng.
Chạy bộ mỗi ngày với máy chạy bộ của Kingsport sẽ mang đến cho bạn một sức khỏe dẻo dai, một tinh thần sảng khoái và một thân hình cường tráng.
Với máy chạy bộ điện của Kingsport phù hợp với tất cả dáng vóc của mỗi người,
tôn lên vẻ đẹp sang trọng, chuẩn sang cho mọi tầng lớp gia đình.
Bạn còn chần chờ gì nữa? Hãy nhanh tay liên hệ với tổng đài miễn phí của chúng tôi 1800 6862
hoặc truy cập website kingsport.vn để đặt hàng và nhận được các phần quà hấp dẫn khi mua máy chạy bộ của tập đoàn Kingsport như cân sức khỏe, thảm yoga cao cấp, bóng tập yoga.
Hãy quên đi những trở ngại, những khó khăn bạn gặp phải khi luyện tập thể dục.
Giờ đây, với máy chạy bộ cao cấp của Kingsport thật dễ dàng và thoải mái với độ dốc 20%, tốc độ 20 km/h, công suất động cơ 7.0 mã lực là dòng máy chạy bộ tiên phong chuẩn mực trên toàn cầu. Ồ, chế độ bảo hành thì sao?
Bảo hành 5 năm, bảo trì trọn đời cho sản phẩm Kingsport.
Đại diện Kingsport tại Việt Nam, tất cả các sản phẩm máy chạy bộ Kingsport được bảo hành 5 năm và bảo trì trọn đời nhằm đảm bảo uy tín cũng như chất lượng sản phẩm do Kingsport mang lại.
Khách hàng đến với Kingsport sẽ yên tâm hơn với cách phục vụ chuyên nghiệp của nhân viên.
Kingsport luôn đặt niềm tin của khách lên hàng đầu, phấn đấu để có một đội ngũ nhân viên chuyên nghiệp với tâm và đức. Bạn hãy nhấc máy lên và gọi ngay đến tổng đài miễn cước 1800 6862 để được tư vấn.
Thật sự là vợ chồng chị cũng không có nhiều thời gian tới phòng tập, nên nhiều khi là để đều đặn vào để mỗi ngày hoặc là một tuần tới mấy ngày tới phòng tập thì nó hơi khó. Nhưng nếu ở nhà mình thì mình có thể tiết kiệm được cái thời gian mình đi. Nên chị thấy là cái thương hiệu này thì máy nó chạy rất là êm.
Màn hình LCD hiển thị chương trình tập luyện thông minh được cài đặt sẵn.
Người sử dụng chỉ cần một vài bước nhập liệu đơn giản như độ tuổi, giới tính thì đã có ngay một bài tập phù hợp bản thân. Hãy trải nghiệm bạn mới thấy được sự kỳ diệu mà máy chạy bộ Kingsport mang lại.
Giờ đây bạn chỉ cần lên máy và chạy liên tục, chạy với tốc độ thật cao, chạy vượt đồi leo núi, chạy với cường độ thật cao. Với máy chạy bộ điện của Kingsport thật dễ dàng.
Đây là dòng máy chạy bộ tiên phong thích hợp trong lĩnh vực kinh doanh phòng tập thể hình, phòng gym. Để biết rõ hơn về Kingsport và các sản phẩm của Kingsport, quý khách vui lòng liên hệ tổng đài miễn phí 1800 6862 với sự cam kết về chất lượng, sự ưu đãi về giá thành và chế độ bảo hành bảo trì chu đáo. Kingsport sẽ là nơi mà bạn có thể đặt niềm tin mua sắm lên hàng đầu. Tự hào là thiết bị chăm sóc sức khỏe chuẩn mực trên toàn cầu, được đông đảo quý khách hàng yêu thích hiện nay. bạn hãy đến các showroom của Kingsport. Giờ đây, với máy chạy bộ Kingsport có đa dạng về mẫu mã cho bạn lựa chọn, từ dòng cao cấp cho tới dòng trung cấp và dòng phổ thông. Quý khách hàng hãy gọi ngay tổng đài tư vấn miễn phí 1800 6862 hoặc đến hệ thống showroom Kingsport trên toàn quốc để mua được sản phẩm chính hãng.
Chúng tôi có rất nhiều showroom để cho quý khách trải nghiệm thực tế. Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, tại quận Tân Bình, Bình Chánh, khu dân cư Trung Sơn, Gò Vấp, Đầm Sen, Bình Thạnh,
Cần Thơ,
An Giang,
Bạc Liêu,
Vũng Tàu, Đồng Nai, Bình Dương, thành phố Buôn Ma Thuột, Nha Trang, Đà Nẵng,
Huế,
Nghệ An, Kingsport Thanh Hóa, Hải Phòng, Kingsport Hà Nội, Cầu Giấy số 96 Nguyễn Đình Hoàn, Long Biên, Hà Đông.
The response has been overwhelming. I spoke to him last night. His fund, when I talked to him last night, his fund had raised just more than $12 million. 24 hours later, now the number is up to nearly $16 million. Incredible. Last night, I spoke to J.J. Watt about what he's doing. First of all, when you see a neighborhood like this, what goes through your mind?
Devastating. I mean, I think that's the only word that can describe it. When you drive through the city, when you see the floods, when you see the pictures on TV of what's happening, devastating is the only word that you can use. But I think inspiring is the next word that comes to mind.
Because of what you're seeing the neighbors do.
Exactly. You see the neighbors, you see the policemen, you see the firemen, you see the helicopters, you see what humanity can do when everybody comes together in a time like this, and that's the most inspiring part of it all.
So do you have a goal now in mind, or is it just open-ended?
My first phase is what I'm doing is this weekend, my teammates and I, we have semi-trucks rolling in from out of town that we've filled up. We have about 9 semi-trucks that are going to come into town, and we have those all filled with stock supplies, water, food, clothing, everything. So we're going to give that out this weekend. That's our first step. And then I'm going to regroup after this weekend because obviously, like I said, I was planning for 200,000, and now with a new plan for multi-millions, I'm going to make sure that I get with the people that did Katrina and that learned from Katrina so that I can make sure I do it right. Because with these people trusting me with their money, I want to make sure that I don't do it hastily. I want to do it exactly the right way.
Did you ever think you would see a response like this? I mean, in an event, I mean, you always wonder, well, what would happen if I lived through something like this? Did you ever think you would see people come together like that?
I always hope so, but to see it come into reality is a whole different ballgame, and it's so sweet to watch. It's so beautiful to watch. You see lines of volunteers where you're like, is that a line for the food or is that a line? And then all of a sudden it's a line of volunteers, and I think it's so special when you have that many people wanting to help and that many people willing to give what